This is of great Immanuel Kant. UPSC has asked on question on categorical imperative of Kant earlier, but I was surprised and I was pleasantly surprised. This is a quote we quote so often in the class, and this is a quote of Immanuel Kant, the great Immanuel Kant, in the paper. In law, a man is guilty when he violates the rights of others. In ethics, he is guilty if he only thinks of doing so. There are three things: guilty, violating the rights of others, and thinking of violating the rights of others. First of all, you have to understand what is meant by guilty. Guilty means culpability. Guilty means that you have to take the responsibility of things. Punishment is implied by proving you to be guilty. So you are guilty, meaning now you will be punished. You are culpable. You have to take responsibility. Why? Because you have violated the rights of others. So first we have to understand, when you violate the rights of others, why should you be punished? Rights is one of the standard of ethics. It is one of normative ethics. The purpose of ethics is what? We have seen the third question, I believe, the second question. The second question was having two parts, that ethics develops moral behavior in human beings. Correct? So one of the normative ethics is rights. So when you protect the rights of others, or rights of others are protected by the state and co-citizens, then that leads to moral behavior. When your rights are protected, when you feel that you have been treated justly by the state, then you are ready to cooperate by the state. You are ready to have consensus. You are ready to do charity. You are ready to have trust people, work with people. So that brings peace and harmony. Now you understand there's a concept of corruption, as you do in GS2. You must be quite familiar with. But corruption there is in a narrow sense. There's a definition of corruption of World Bank using public office for private gain. Of course, that's corruption. Corruption in real sense is disturbing the balance. If you disturb the balance of this universe, that is corruption. If you disturb the balance of this world, if you are having excessive emission of greenhouse, that is leading to global warming, ozone hole depletion, that is corruption. If the ecological balance is disturbed, that is corruption. If the balance of the content of the milk because of adulteration is disturbed, that is corruption. If the balance of the budget, the coming of fund and the implementation of the fund, outgoing of the fund or the ground, that is disturbed. If you're embezzling money from that process, that is corruption. If the balance of your soul is disturbed, that is also corruption. If the harmony of two values, honesty and empathy, that is disturbed, you have been doing too much of empathy or too much of objectivity, that is also corruption. Now, if you are corrupt, you are guilty. If your corruption is proven, if you've done anything wrong, you are guilty. The first part of the quote says, in law, a man is guilty when he violates the rights of others. Violating the rights of others is disturbing the balance in society, because it takes away the due to people that was protected by the rights. And when that happens, there is injustice. When injustice happens, then there is sense of relative deprivation. And then people do not cooperate. In that case, there is confrontation, there is strife, there is competition, there is war and violence. That disturbs the peace of society. And since that has disturbed the peace of society, and it will disturb the peace of society, you are corrupt and you are guilty of that. So you should be punished. When should you be punished? You should be punished when you disturb the balance. When you disturb the balance of society, the peace and order of society, you should be punished. That addresses the first part. Of course, you are guilty because you have disturbed the balance. How? By violating the rights of others. Protecting the rights is same as delivery of justice. And Aristotle has said that it is in justice that the ordering of society is centered. If you disturb the peace of the land, if you bring corruption in the land, you should be punished. That is the first part. The second part says, in ethics he is guilty if he only thinks of doing so. And this is a very interesting part. Very, very interesting part. If you think of doing something, what wrong have you done? If you think of doing wrong, have you done something wrong already? If you haven't done something wrong, if you haven't disturbed the balance of anything, you should not be punished, because that is not corruption. You should be punished only for corruption. The question is, by thinking wrong, What tangible wrong have you created in the universe? If nothing has gone wrong, then logically you should not be punished. There's a very high importance of thinking, and UPSC has asked question previously, I think in 2019, a quotation of Gandhi, and the quotation was, "Man is but the product of his thought. What he thinks, he becomes." Thinking is very important. If you have little philosophical exposure, you would know about Descartes, and there's a very famous quotation of Descartes: "I think, therefore I am." Thinking is a very important part of being, a very important part of existence. So thinking is very important. You do attitude, you do three components of attitude. There's cognitive component, affective component, and behavioral component. In the cognitive component, you have belief, you have knowledge, you have experience, you also have thoughts. Your thoughts develop your inclinations, your propensity, and that develops attitude. So your thought already has made you inclined in a particular way, and wrong thought has made you inclined in a particular way. So corruption already has happened. The inner inclination in a wrong direction already has happened. Your moral reasoning already got corrupted. Your thinking actually does the interpretation of your experience, and that decides how reasoning will operate. So something wrong has happened already. You are broken from within if you're having wrong thinking. You're compromising your character, you're compromising your reasoning, you're brutalizing your conscience, you're eroding your sensitivity, and you're developing a wrong inclination to act. And come the situation, you will act. You have developed a wrong attitude. Your existence, your being is decided by thinking. I think, therefore I am. That's the quote of Descartes. The quote of Gandhi you're familiar with. A man is but the product of his thought. What he thinks, he becomes. So your becoming, your being, your existence is dependent on your thinking. It's a very powerful thing then. Then wrong thinking is an act of corruption. You should be guilty and you should be punished. So it's a very simple thing. Since you have done something wrong, you should be punished. Since you have done corruption, since you have disturbed the balance, so you should be punished. And you are punished. How are you punished? You are punished by cognitive dissonance. You are punished by crisis of conscience, by guilt, by shame, by low self-worth, by low self-esteem. You are punished. Sometimes that punishment is so huge that you go into depression, and sometimes you do suicide. You must have heard of Kevin Carter. Kevin Carter did a brilliant work of highlighting the famine in Sudan through photojournalism, but he was guilty in his conscience for not acting, only taking the photograph and leaving the country. But that photograph shook the consciousness globally, and help started coming in to the poor African country Sudan. But thing is, he did not do anything by his own self. So the thing is that you have to take moral responsibility, and thoughts are a very powerful thing. In all religion, it is suggested that do not have wrong thinking. And psychological experiments have proven that the stories that children hear at childhood, the children's story, they have huge impact on behavior as an adult. Nothing goes away. There is nothing that you take in comes out. There is no attrition of your memory. So everything eternally impacts you. Your psychology develops in adulthood based upon what you have consumed in your childhood. So the content, your information, your thoughts, your belief, they are going to decide your existence, your being. So you have to keep that pure. Adulteration in that should call for punishment. That is really a crime. All right, so that is the understanding of quotation. I've broken it down into the terms. Guilt is culpability. It's taking responsibility for wrongdoing, and it's corruption, and that calls for punishment. That's the understanding of guilty here. Violating the right of others is wrong because it undermines the social contract. It infringes on the human dignity and autonomy. It creates an imbalance in justice and fairness in society. It disrupts social harmony and order. So that's corruption. If you violate the rights of others, that should call for punishment. So punishment is justified. It serves as deterrent. It upholds rule of law. It also gives a retribution. It gives closure to the victim. So you should be punished. You should be punished, and by law, you are punished. This is the first part of the quote. The second part is that what's wrong when you have wrong thoughts? I think, therefore I am. I gave this quote of Descartes. A man is but the product of his thought. What he thinks, he becomes. That's the importance of thinking. You know that the thoughts influence decision making. Thoughts influence attitude. Thoughts influences your inclination for action. So cognitive attitude is developed by your thoughts. You know these things. So that's the importance of thought. Immoral thinking must be considered as a form of corruption. It destroys your character, it brutalizes your soul, it develops a wrong disposition, the wrong cognitive attitude, disturbs the harmony of our soul. Harmony of a soul was a concept given by Plato. He says that soul has three parts: reason, emotion, and desire. And there should be harmony. There should be right amount of reasoning, and reasoning must be supreme. Wrong thought doesn't let you reason properly because the experience and the informations, they are interpreted by the thoughts that you hold. So this is disharmony of soul. Man comes inclined to seek the truth, but the wrong thoughts will prohibit you from seeking the truth, from achieving the good. It destroys the goodwill. Goodwill in the Kantian philosophy is the highest thing. And there's a one peculiar thing about the second book that Kant wrote on morality. He says that the only thing in the entire universe which is good in itself without qualification is goodwill. Knowledge needs qualification. How you are using knowledge. Knowledge should not be used for cybercrime and for deceiving people. Any skill that you possess, whether that's leading to human well-being or not, so it requires qualification. Knowledge requires qualification. Utilitarianism requires qualification. Your brilliant state of mind, your calmness also requires qualification. If you're very calm, Kant's write in his book that you can become a very good assassin. A calm person can actually take a shot with high accuracy. So how you're using your calmness, it requires qualification. What does not require qualification is willing good for others. That doesn't require any qualification. Goodwill is compromised by your biased, immoral thoughts. So that is doing real corruption actually to this universe. That is real. These are not theoretical things. These are real. These are just preceding behavior. And based upon this, the behavior will come and the corruption is known. When you do the test, you know the corruption. Unless the test hasn't revealed, it doesn't mean corruption is not there. If your attitude has developed, if prejudice has developed, if biasness has developed, if conscience has been eroded, if sensitivity is gone, if reasoning is gone from society, society is already corrupt. And that calls for guilt and accountability, and that's called for punishment. That's what the quote means. So this form of corruption, which is not legally punished, deserves moral censure because it undermines the foundation of ethical behavior and societal trust. And that's how it is done. So the punishment comes in the form of moral sanctions: guilt, shame, regret, low esteem, low self-worth, crisis of conscience, cognitive dissonance. The punishment is that you will not grow personally, lack of personal growth and ethical development. There is no salvation for you. There is no enlightenment for you, because salvation and enlightenment comes from knowledge. And knowledge is pure of biasness. Knowledge is based on rationality, not based on biasness or prejudice. For knowledge, you require right information, and that has to be interpreted in the light of right thoughts. Right thought will stop you in the process of, wrong thoughts will stop you in the process of enlightenment and salvation. So that's also a form of punishment. Sometimes there's a loss of social repute and trustworthiness. That is also a social sanction. That's also a form of punishment. So how to implement this idea of quote? How do we ensure that our thought remains right? That is the idea of integrity. Integrity is an idea to integrate our thought, speech, and action. That's the idea of integrity. So if you have integrity, if you have emotional intelligence, that emotion informs reason. In idea of EI, you do understand that emotions and reasons, they both are guided. And when your reasons are guided properly, then your thought process will also be taken care of. If you have proper EI, if you follow right samadhi, right concentration, one of the eightfold path of Buddhism, right mindfulness, moment to moment awareness of thoughts and intentions, or karma yoga idea of Indian philosophy, or contentment, santosh, satisfaction, leading to practice of virtue and happiness. There's nothing that you want from others. There is nothing that you feel bad about actions of others. You are contented. You do not need, but you are a provider. You are a nurturer. You are a giver. In that case, you have no grudge. You have no discontentment. You have no anger whatsoever from anybody. You are bound to have goodwill. You are bound to have good thoughts for others. Contentment is one important idea of living a moral life. So these are some of the prescriptions to implement the idea of the quote. As in the answer, you have to reflect your character, that you are a problem solver. What you should do not have to just discuss the theoretical things and go away. You have to show how on ground it can be practically implemented. All right, so these are the steps to answer the quote.